All right, here I am finally concluding the second edition of the book as well. It's been a lot of work and it is a lot of material. As I always say, for a classroom, you would focus it a bit more and not have so much material because you get certain number of weeks and lectures. But since it's on YouTube, I can put all the material and you can do the work of choosing. I'm aware that it's not easy to search through these things because YouTube gives sections, so that will be like a course for me. Within that it allows playlists which I have to organize based on what I think is best. Here I've organized it as part 1, part 2, part 3, and then within that all the chapters. But ideally you would want to have, so those are called playlists. Ideally you would want to have playlists made up of playlists, but YouTube doesn't seem to allow it, so it's very frustrating. So it's very limited in terms of how you can organize to make it easier to search through. So I'm sorry that it's not easier to present this material in a better way. That's YouTube's fault. So if they change things, then I will sit down and rearrange all the courses to make it easier. Okay, so it's easy to succumb to pessimism, like Zizek's apocalyptic view that we are closer to the end of the world than to fundamental social change towards sustainability. However, I choose to be optimistic and hope that Simon is proven right when stating, perhaps our very salvation will come from the severity of the problems we will have to solve, finding an ecologically sustainable state for the earth and all its living inhabitants, injecting far stronger criteria of fairness into the allocation of available resources and their products, and disarming the various competitions that now take place between very imaginable sort of we and they. So I had commented already on this because this is repeating from the first edition, but when we say our salvation will come from the severity of the problems, so somehow that's supposed to make us change our behavior and consumption and so on. But we know already that global warming and climate change create winners and losers, and there are people who have the resources to protect themselves, adaptation, mitigation, etc., and there are the vulnerable ones who don't have. So the good way to think would be to say we dealt with COVID-19 in an urgent way by accelerating the vaccine process, development of vaccines, and let's say we saved a lot of lives, and we may have side effects showing up in the coming years and decades, we don't know, but nonetheless we got together and decided to deal with the urgent problem, and we dealt with it as best as we could with science, with the best science we have for developing vaccines. Whereas here, in terms of the development pathways being somehow magically accepted because of the severity of the problems, optimistic view is that yes, we will again do like COVID, but by then who would have paid a price and who will continue to pay the price even on the sustainability pathway, and will there be a fairness of allocation of available resources so that there will be nobody suffering anymore and so on. So these are optimistic visions which I like, but this book is not the one which tells us how to get there. There's a lot of wishful thinking, since it's about building resilience without saying anything about the technologies, the industria that we wanted to change to sustainia, how the industria can look when it's coexisting with sustainia, because industria is not going away in terms of the technologies, right? We are trying to solve this problem with more technologies, including AI, carbon capture, EVs, renewables, and lab-grown meat and food, and so on and so forth. So it's wishful thinking to some extent, but better to be optimistic than pessimistic. So science has essential roles to play in facilitating such dramatic and critical changes in the transactions of humankind, changes that are necessary for the continuation of our world as we know it. So we'll see that oops, we already saw that before. Um, Most scientific disciplines have a role in this endeavor, but the holistic, systemic, and transdisciplinary approach of sustainability science is imperative in this context, as it brings together scholarship and practice, global and local perspectives from the north and south, and disciplines across the natural and social sciences, engineering, and medicine. So this is from quote from some other literature, but the book doesn't by itself discuss much of engineering, let alone medicine, right? So sustainability science provides a comprehensive description of our sustainability challenges and coherent conceptual and transformative frameworks to explain, understand, and improve them. It maps the past, present, and many potential futures of these challenges, including their symptomatic events and underlying change processes. It points out the necessity of acknowledging and addressing uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and dynamic change for sustainable development to be possible in our contemporary world, and provides conceptual tools and approaches to facilitate that. The concepts of risk and resilience are thus fundamental for sustainability science, as are systems approaches and participatory approaches. Again, how to make this happen is anything but obvious, but having the theory of it, having the sustainability science behind all these things should help. So maybe there are other books. There are sustainability principles books like Eleanor Ostrom's work. There's Pam Matson from Stanford and her colleagues, and many others who are actually field workers who work on sustainability principles and science, from how commons are managed and how successful management of commons and sustainability of commons and triumph of the commons happen, and how tragedy of the commons can be avoided. We haven't learned those concepts here, so it's a bit too theoretical in that sense. Science is a crucial driver for change towards sustainability, but not only through the descriptive focus of traditional science. Sustainability science must also be prescriptive and supplies a scientifically rigorous must be prescriptive and also supply a scientific rigorous way of bridging the chasm between the descriptive and the prescriptive by complementing traditional science with design science. So we talked about the double loop design and so on, but essentially it is saying unless the solutions are co-developed with participatory approaches and benefit everybody, prescriptive science will not work. So Kyoto Protocol was very prescriptive and it completely failed. The Paris Agreement is more bottom-up democratic with nationally determined contributions, and there is participation, but now we are saying it's going too slow, but then the technology is not helping there much in terms of carbon capture, let's say. Okay, so it also highlights the importance of practical action and emphasizes the significance of capacity development for resilience as a tool for sustainability. This part is very solid in terms of thinking about Human Development Index and environmental footprint and the pathway that stays in this phase space. So in addition to the changes in society caused by international capacity development or other practical initiatives, sustainability science also promotes fundamental changes of society. He keeps saying changes of society. I want to say changes to society, making social change towards a more sustainable world a central aim. Again, how to make it global and how to get everybody engaged and be equitable and fair and just are very serious challenges. Finally, our world is a fantastic place, and we have proven to be an astonishingly adaptive species throughout history. We went from hunter-gatherers to agraria to industria and survived many disasters along the way, and the repeated arguments are that Holocene has been relatively quiet, but we have gone through many marine isotope stages and big climate upheavals and so on. So maybe we have it in us, and COVID may be a good example of how we can get it done. So we have conquered all corners of the world and flourished regardless of environmental circumstances, although our current prospects are rather disheartening considering our apparent incapacity to address our contemporary challenges substantially. I am sure we will prevail this time around too. So just to make a silly joke, we always say we have conquered all corners of the world, or that people came from all corners of the world, and yet we are on a sphere. Our world doesn't have corners. Think about that, right? So the question is therefore not if we will change direction towards sustainability, but when the anticipated or actual costs are high enough to make anything else so overwhelmingly troubling that even the ambivalent and hesitant majority starts to engage in addressing our situation. So I am reminded of an old line apparently from a Saudi energy minister in one of the meetings that said the Stone Age didn't come to an end because they ran out of stones. So when things become too expensive in one direction, the good example is now coal. Coal is still being used and will be used by countries like India and China for a while, but in rich countries it is becoming economically unfeasible to mine it and use it, even though it is mined and exported, but even that is economically feasible. So somewhere solutions have to come in to replace fossil fuel and everything else and make everything sustainable, decarbonized, so that we don't have to wait for this impossible situation of everything being so bad that we have only one path left. So hope is truly stubborn as ever. Many people look up at the stars and dream themselves away, finding another place to live, even terraforming Mars. I would like children to focus on flying to Mars and back, or even beyond the solar system, rather than worry that climate change will bring the world to an end. We need to look down at the ground and dream ourselves to stay. I'm not sure I buy this. On Earth, the only livable planet we know, even with her scars. Is really Earth the only livable planet we know? Well, we will find out microbes on other planets, moons of the planets very soon. Maybe even in my lifetime, definitely in your lifetime if you're a student. And that gives us hope that maybe life is not so unique to Earth, and maybe Earth is not the only livable planet as we know, and maybe our science and technology will allow us to go do farming on Moon and Mars and make the entire solar system our home, not because we have no other choice, just because it'll be fun to fly around and live few months on Mars and back few months on the Moon, go for honeymoon really on the Moon and go for retirement on Mars or something like this, right? That is a crazy idea. So with that, let's close the second edition of this book as well. Next up is some sustainability social science research, and then sustainability science research, and then sustainability education. So again, one wouldn't have so many books covered in a course in class, but since I'm just making them as I go along, I will continue to put out all the best books that I think will add value to sustainability as a whole. Okay, so see you in the next book.